Hello humans, welcome to another React video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be reacting to Adam Savage going through the set of the Hail Mary spacecraft. Hail Mary being a new movie that's coming out. It's in the sci-fi genre. I'm a big sci-fi fan, but I have not seen the movie yet, so hopefully there are no spoilers in this episode of Tested from Adam Savage. I don't think there will be because I think this episode came out before the movie came out. But this is the first time watching anything sci-fi related on this channel. Everything up until this point has been strictly fact-based and has just been like space and Artemis 2 and the Apollo missions and NASA and SpaceX and, those sort of things, which I still will be doing. But I wanted to just test the waters and see if there was any crowd out there for sci-fi fans. Because if there is, that would be great. That pulls from my own interests of sci-fi, and I can start doing sci-fi content on this channel. So this is a test a little bit. I also don't know how well I'm going to be able to react to a video where there's no facts being thrown around and I can't ask valid questions, but we'll see how it goes. And without further ado, here is the video.
While getting a tour behind the scenes during the production of Project Hail Mary, Tested talked to production designer Charlie Wood as he toured us through the dazzling cockpit of the Hail Mary and showed us the unique problems his team had to solve to build this dynamic and fully immersive practical set.
Charlie, I don't even know where to begin, but actually one of the weird first things I want to talk about is, like you, I have built many, many models like this over my time, and
I appreciate a film having put even this level of detail into a work to create models of all the different sets. I know a lot of movies do that, but a lot of movies also don't do that.
Love foam core models, but I'm really excited with how much 3D printing, just a very rudimentary level of 3D printing, is added to this process in terms of being able to see detail.
Yeah, which is everything. Because I think particularly these are actually quite small sets.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to describe something, get the director excited by it, the more detail you can get into a small space, you'll probably be able to sell it easier, quite frankly, is it? And
I never thought about Hollywood using 3D printing in this way. It makes a lot of sense. It's actually really cool. I'm actually now thinking maybe they use it in a lot of ways and we just don't know about it. Or, more specifically, I don't know about it. It would make sense, I guess, to 3D print even large set pieces if you were able to find a 3D printer that could be capable of producing large set pieces. But even like, I see people make like helmets and swords and stuff online out of 3D printing. I guess you could do that with movies too, and it's probably a lot cheaper than custom making props any other way.
obviously, nowadays with 3D printing, the accuracy level, is fantastic.
That's crazy.
And you can produce models quite quickly.
Well, now, and speaking of accuracy, you're working on a near-future spaceship.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you used our beloved ISS as a primary reference source.
We did.
But I'm curious about jumping off from that. Like, we have these different country modules. Are you working with, like, looking at different countries' space programs and casting forward?
Correct. I mean, the mainstay of this was the ISS because it's a one sort of platform interior sort of space architectural space you can study at length, and it sort of gave you sort of you could understand scale from it, sort of what a working environment probably should be.
Yeah.
I have not yet looked at anything relating to the International Space Station or any of the space stations that exist. As I understand, there are quite a few of them up there. So this is definitely pushing me in that direction. I have made a whole list through the past 2 weeks of reacting to videos. I've made a whole list of things I want to look up to watch videos on, and that list has exceeded 4 pages now of just bullet points. So they are sorted by, type of thing that they are, but I really need to hop on that list and actually start watching through some of those videos so it doesn't just grow, into infinity. But I have been trying to keep up with current events as well, like the Artemis 2.
You could understand airlocks, you could understand hatches, because the hatches were, one of our main sort of head-scratching things. And in addition to that, yes, we then started looking at things like, what was available to us, things like the Soyuz module, some of the Chinese modules. So I would say the mainstay of it was originally the ISS, but from that we we then looked at other technologies, other international space engineering places, and then from.
I wonder if any capsules exist on Earth from space stations. Like, I guess probably not. I'm going to speak out of ignorance here, but I would guess if there had been any replacements of modules or parts on the space stations up until this point, they wouldn't necessarily go through all the pain and trouble of trying to get it back into the atmosphere, splash down, recovered. I would guess. I don't know why they would do that. Maybe there's a practical, reasonable purpose to bring down old modules. Maybe you retrofit them rather than building a new one. Maybe it's easier or cheaper. Not sure, again. But I'd be interested to know if there's any former capsules floating around in our own atmosphere, like on Earth.
And really from that point there, then we started to break it out ourselves and take those little nuggets and then develop into what we wanted it to be.
And I know these are excellent for discussing the aesthetics of each set, but it looks to me like these are also intensely important for the problem solving of shooting on small sets. We were standing here yesterday, and it's a really cramped space.
Yeah, because they are. And no, it's an interesting thing because
it's interesting that they would build walls on both sides. And obviously the top is open, so you could take a camera on a crane and just drop it into the ceiling and film that way. And that's probably super easy, barely an inconvenience. But on a lot of sets, movie sets, what they do is they don't build two walls on either side of a corridor. They will for some scenes, obviously. But for the majority of the scenes, as I understand how movies are made, is they'll basically just have one wall worth of stuff. And they film everything against that wall with all the cameras and everything, all the sound and all the technicians, directors, and all that stuff on the other side of that. And so there's, instead of see how there's two walls here, there'd just be the one wall with the actors in front of it, and then there wouldn't be another wall on the other side. It would just be all the film camera stuff. So it is interesting that they chose to put up two walls on a lot of these sets.
Typically, certainly, the films I've done in the past, generally, you try and sort of make spaces, you may sort of want more scale, but from the get-go, Chris and Phil, we said that it's important that we stay within the space and we feel what space would be, which is essentially, to a greater degree, probably claustrophobic, yeah? And if the spaces become unrealistically large, they're going to feel less realistic.
And there's less stakes.
So, and all of that. But so what we have from the Hail Marys, we do have these tighter spaces, but then as soon as you step through the airlock, you're into the never-ending.
I wonder if these pictures here are like real pictures, like stock images, or if they're like AI. I can imagine Hollywood using both. I mean, it might even be smart to use both, because if you're using AI, you can generate an aesthetic you're going for in a few seconds rather than, or even a few minutes if you're trying to be detailed with your prompts, without trying to scour the internet for stock images that already fit the aesthetic that you formulated in your mind that you want.
Ending world of space itself. So you go from this to everything. And actually, when I was watching, just little cuts of the film, I personally think it works beautifully.
Amazing.
Because, you hear the rumbling of the ship, you hear the noise of the air conditioning system, and it's tight, and you're right on surfaces, and he's hot and sweaty, and then suddenly that door opens, and it's never-ending, this never-ending wilderness of space. So I hope that will ultimately be something, we're very cognizant of it.
It also looks like you've been using these to solve architectural problems, like flying out walls for being able to get cameras and puppeteers and personnel in these tight spaces.
So that's why I was talking about before. He called it flying out walls. I guess that makes sense. You would build two walls, but then one of them would be removable. One of them would be static. One of them would just be able to be turned into nothing when they need to film that scene in that particular space.
Yeah, that's been there's so, when you design a film, you have these problems. I have to say this film has the same issues, let's call it.
I wonder what that black thing is in the middle. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, it's either a part of the movie that I just don't know what it could be, some entity or something, or it could be a camera motion that they've tracked in physical form, or it could be something else. I'm not really sure.
But the same things you have to think about. Plus, we had to deal with, as you say, shooting in very tight spaces, so how the camera has to work within those spaces, and working closely with Greg Fraser and Paul, and equally where they need to put the lenses.
Right.
So that we couldn't, a lot of this stuff you can't work out on the day. It's not a question of getting a chainsaw out on the day and just start cutting a bunch of holes. So everything,
you have to
all of
figure
this
that out long
was
before.
predetermined.
Right.
Yeah? So for instance, I think this set here, which we're just going to pull apart, this set here, all of these,
Yeah.
I don't know how many hundreds of panels we had, individually, this was all built on a...
Are those stickers, do you think? Like, if these were Legos, those would be stickers. But I wonder if, like, if they designed that, they just drew a sketch real quick and then just printed it on a sticker sheet and then slapped it on the inside of there, or if they took the time to, like, draw on the inside of there. I'm going to guess they're stickers.
framework, and each individual monitor had to come out, but the other monitors had to stay lit, but it also had to stay structurally sound. So it was a really complex, layered discussion, which took many, many weeks of trying to figure out how this would all be.
I can only
And then we
imagine.
needed a lot of engineering support behind it, because the truth is I haven't done anything as complex as this, really, in my career. Then on top of that, we then had to deal with zero gravity. So we have basically gravity.
Yes, I'm very curious how they dealt with zero gravity. My guess would be just strings and wires, like every other film that has to deal with zero gravity or less gravity or flying. It would be really cool to, at some point in the future, see a Hollywood production get up to space for zero gravity stuff. That'll be the day that space is, like, real to a lot of mainstream people, is like, including what I would have seen as real space achievement progress, like 3 weeks ago before starting this channel and learning about everything I have. That's when it'll, like, in the mainstream eye, I feel like that's when it'll be real. Like, Hollywood goes up to space to shoot zero gravity film. That would be so cool.
Zero gravity and centrifugal gravity. So a lot of these sets have to play in multiple ways, and they always all have to make sense. And I think, in truth, we try to figure out as much as we could. But, you know, we had all sorts of strange problems, like, you know, a hatch, right? So say you have a hatch, you open a hatch, and a hatch hinges hanging this way. But obviously, once we go like this, the forces on the hatch is completely different.
Right.
And we hadn't the hinges look great. We made them from aluminium. But actually, we should have made them from steel, because of the pinion that was in it. Obviously, just moved by as smallest percentages, and the hatches wouldn't close. So, but normally you're not turning sets upside down.
No,
If it's a Georgian bedroom, you know, the door just opens and closes as it should. So, yes.
Is there a piece here that gave you the most that generated the most stomach acid?
The cockpit.
Yeah.
Because the cockpit, commonly known as the Coke can, was only, I think it's like 8 foot in diameter, right?
Oh my God, that's it.
So it's really tight.
That is pretty tight, actually.
Was the whole idea,
Especially
was when
for
Grace
filming.
gets into, it's completely overwhelmed by the amount of information that's in front of him, meaning
it's
the
like all
screens
the
and
world's
buttons.
information.
So
I wonder if any of these set pieces rotated. You know, like, did they just, like this, you see how the chair is kind of like, you know, I wonder if, like, the interiors rotated or the exteriors rotated, the whole thing rotated, or if they just used a lot of camera rotations. I'm not sure.
So he was basic, and we wanted to create a space not only which was a cockpit of a ship and had all the instrumentation that you'd ever need in it, but we just wanted to create this sort of beautiful wall, or this beautiful tube of light.
Yeah.
It was called a tube of light, right?
Wow.
That had 7 or 8 different personalities to it within the lighting system. I mean. So, for instance, you know, when we first take off, when we're first in space, when we first find him, we came up with a sort of black and white lighting system for all of the graphics, which made it very monochromatic.
Yeah.
Then we mixed amber into that to give it, you know, the sort of the dawn of the film.
I don't know anything about this film. I haven't seen it or seen even any trailers. Actually, I've seen a few trailers, but just mostly commercial ad spots. But I don't know when this film is set, like future, past, present. I'm not sure, but it'll be interesting to see if they dive into how they did analog versus digital. And I hate the sci-fi trope of like just having a wall of like ambiguous blinking lights. I know a lot of like I'm a huge Stargate fan, and like every single episode in the SGC has like this panel, this huge panel wall of just like all these little light bulbs that randomly blink on and off for no reason whatsoever. I hate that trope. It's kind of funny to see it, but I kind of hope they go the step beyond and actually make all the lights make sense, you know?
Film feel to it. And then we had these other moments where we use it just in a cyan mode, yeah, to give it another feeling, a more relaxed feeling. Then we go to green, which was more hostile. So
are you solving those in a virtual environment as well as?
No. Wow. The other thing, actually, that's interesting what you said. The other thing with all of these sets, I mean, we've got a fantastic visual effects supervisor. We have tried, and he will be touching many, many frames, I agree, but we've also tried to do a lot of this in camera. More so, you know what I mean? We're not... Yeah.
I have such an enormous amount of respect for directors and VFX artists and producers who do in-camera versus in post. Like, that is a huge thing for me. I think it makes movies last longer. I mean, you look at Lord of the Rings, they were filmed like 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and they still have better effects than some modern movies that are currently coming out. And I think a lot of that is just they did everything on camera. They did everything practically. They didn't just go straight to the computer for everything. They did for some things, obviously. Smeagol is 100% CGI, but I mean, most of the reason why films like Lord of the Rings look so good 20 years after they were filmed is because they did a lot of it practically. And I think any movie, including this one, that films the majority of their VFX practically will get a much longer lasting like result of good filmmaking. And I really appreciate when films do that.
Yeah, we're not. This is not process work.
Crazy.
So not only say you've got this cockpit that has to function as it does, you've got all of the instrumentation which has to function. You've got the chairs which have to function, so they need to pitch, roll, yaw, and it's on a slewing system so that it can. When we first, and it's all going to fall to pieces, but when we first saw the set, if I can show you here, I'll show the camera. Basically, you climb up into the cockpit.
Oh, right. He climbs up. Yeah.
So you actually climb up through this hatch here. The hatch opens, and the hatch is very beautiful. Then you climb up into it.
Yeah.
And what happens is it then turns into centrifugal.
Right.
So all of this instrument, all of the instrument panels slews round, and the chairs themselves slew down.
And that's all functional.
The chairs are functional. Wow. The panels are not.
Right.
But the set does.
But the set does.
And then the whole set had to be built onto a gimbal rig and
That's really cool.
Rig. Then
you're doing real shuttering on the. Oh wow.
Yeah, with all of this electronics, we also have to build it for the puppeteers. And it's only 8 foot in diameter.
Right.
So, you know, the only other film I've ever spoken to about this was a Despot, yeah?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
With Jürgen Prochnow, one of my favourite films.
That's the very first film I ever watched on cable television.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
But he was sort of saying that how complex it was to film in such tight spaces, and, you know, that was...
I'm not familiar with that film he just mentioned. I don't even know what the name is, really, but it is really cool that they've designed all this to function functionally, and that it all moves, and that the whole thing will be on a gimbal, and the whole, you know, that is really cool.
That one, but I mean, equally, a lot of these sets, you know, the airlocks, they all had to work in different orientations. The medical bay, which is that great big set over there, I can show you this one too. This is a set at the beginning of the film, which should all fall apart.
It is quite large, even for a model.
I'm sure, but essentially has this orientation to it.
Oh wow!
So
this is when we first see it.
So I can show you in here. There we go. But when you first look into, when he first wakes up, this is Grace. What happens is that lower bed comes out of the tube, but it is, in fact, I can probably take that off here. Ooh, there we go.
There we go.
Pull the pins out, that's why they're there. Basically, the lower bed in here...
comes out of one of these...
In fact, let me just pull this off here. There we go. I can just pull that out, it's fine.
That would give me such anxiety ripping down a model like that I'm like actively trying to use for a film. I guess if he built it all, then he has no problem kind of dissecting it. But that would give me a lot of anxiety doing that.
So there we go.
Okay,
so,
there
So
you
this bed here is it. All of these beds are in this orientation.
Oh, look at that.
So when we first walk into the set, this is what we built, right?
Right.
We find him here. He wakes up. And the scene plays out. Then he basically climbs up this ladder through the stack system and climbs all the way through the ship. So if you look at this image here, you see the bottom part of the image.
He starts there at the bottom.
And this is what we had to build.
Oh, wow.
And so basically that's his journey. But another part of the film, what happens is
So they had to build everything laying down, but they had to film it all like it was vertical. That's really cool. Unless they built it all vertical, and I'm just misunderstanding how these things are laid out. But it seems like you'd have a lot of very tall sets if you were doing that way.
Is it? When the ship is flying, this part comes off, right? So basically when it's flying in the film, we're flying in a thing called acceleration gravity.
Right.
Basically it's moving.
Yeah.
In fact, it's actually slowing down. But we get to another point in the film where when the ship stops, obviously they would float, so they can't float. So basically the crew module comes out on a tether, and then the whole thing spins like this.
Right,
so this is your centrifugal motion, which means...
I only learned earlier when I was watching a Chris Hadfield astronaut video that they use centrifugal force in space. I knew they had that in sci-fi movies. That was in Interstellar even. But I didn't realize that was something that they actually used, was centrifugal force in space. And it sounds like the space station, again, I haven't reacted to anything about the space station. I don't know anything about the space station. But it sounds like the space station is laid out in a very similar fashion where it's kind of this big round tube thingy. Everything in the center is like free floating. But then if you go out into the circle-y part, you're centrifugally attached to one surface, basically. False gravity, basically.
But this set, the orientation of this set then, now basically flips over 90 degrees like this, and all the beds rotate like this.
This sounds exhausting just to think about.
And then the robot, which tends to also has to work in a similar way. So what is up is down. What is you've got this whole thing going on.
God.
So each set had to operate like that.
And this exists, right? We can visit the cockpit.
Yeah, we can go visit the cockpit.
Excellent.
That's cool. It's really cool that they had to put in so much detail and thought process, and that they did indeed put in so much detail and thought process into the physics of how it would actually function. I think I've seen a lot of sci-fi movies, probably lower budget ones particularly, that don't really think that through, and they just kind of like, oh, the audience they'll just have to assume that XYZ. And it's always, you can always tell, because then you watch the movies, and if you think logically through some of the things that are happening, you're like, well, that wouldn't really happen because XYZ, But it's really cool that they've both invested the time and thought and money into thinking all these things out, and that they've then actually translated that thought, time, and money into process and put this thing in the film that'll function in ways that it would in the space. That's really cool.
Let's do it.
Okay. Props to them.
So this is a layout of the screens of the cockpit.
Yes. So what you're looking at here this was many months ago, and actually Phil and Chris sat here, and it was our first introduction to them in scale about the main part of the cockpit and how it all plays out in the scene.
See, and that's exactly what I was just talking about. You could have had this film have a bunch of screens with random things on them and random blinking lights that don't really do anything, but they took the time to print out this whole wall schematic of all the different screens and buttons, and now they can take the time to put in the detail of those things. And that's just, I can't say enough about this prop department. Whoever they are, I'll have to look up when the movie comes out, or when I watch the movie, I'll have to pay attention to the VFX and props department and all of that stuff. But props to the studio for putting in the work and putting in the detail for this film.
There are thousands and thousands of buttons and many hundreds of screens.
Crazy.
the cockpit, as I say, has many different purposes in the film. And every time you go on it, there's a lot of narrative that has to come out of the screens themselves. So we have a company who's been working, obviously, specifically on that. And basically, we sat here and we just tried to say, here are the main screens. This is what they are, essentially in scale. This was the space itself.
Right, yeah.
And basically to say, how do we play these scenes out? Where will Grace be? And where do the screens need to be to tell the story? Which was complicated because we haven't got 2 screens and 2 chairs.
Right.
And they wanted a space which was dynamic. They wanted him to be able to whiz up and down the cockpit.
Yeah.
So it's all very interactive and as I say, interesting to look at in film.
I'd be interested to know NASA and other space companies, SpaceX. I'd be interested to know how they design cockpits. Like, do they do a full wall printout like this? Do they 3D print scale models? I mean, they have to have some process of designing the inner cockpits of the actual spacecraft, the actual capsules that are going into space and coming back. And I wonder how different that process is, if at all, to the process Hollywood goes through to make realistic cockpits for films.
So this is what this was. So we had all the scene numbers worked out here. Here was sort of the main
I see.
part
They're
of the
blocking
screens.
scenes about where stuff is taking
Correct.
place.
And then they could basically come in and say, no, we don't want to do scene 6 here. We want to do scene 6 here. We want to do the jettison button over here because this is where we want him to be, because we want him to go from there to here. So there's a whole...
So the other thing I'm thinking of is you have the people that you've worked with for years that you trust, teams that you bring in of expertise. Did you have to find a new type of expertise to manage all these graphics and screens and they're coming in and going out?
Yes,
that seems to be like a very bespoke...
On some films, you're quite right. On some films, you would say, well, as an art department, a certain person would look after screen graphics. And we'd all get a bit mucked in and do that. What happened on this film is, like, I have a person called Mariah, she's fantastic. And she, from the get-go, was just basically put onto screen graphics. And that's it. And so what she does is she sort of, where we started with all of that is basically, it's actually some of it's on this wall here.
Well, these are concept.
Well, this was all the reference. So this is all the sort of real-world reference from the shuttle to Soyuz to whatever.
Sorry, that would be a really cool job, to just be the person in charge of screen graphics. Like, I can't imagine that's a whole job. I mean, he just said it was, so I guess I can't imagine it's a whole job. But it's a really niche to be in, and I wonder how that job is cross applicable to other films. But it's cool that they pulled reference images from the shuttles and everything like that.
That's actually how the graphics look in the film. So we're trying to keep everything very grounded. That's what they wanted to do. It's a mad story, so let's keep this grounded. And these are all the color systems as well we started with. So that became a color system. This became a color system. So we started here, and then we put this all into actual, graphic artwork, which we then run through the monitors to show the directors to say, this is this scene from here to here.
Right. Oh my gosh. And everything needs a buy-off, of course.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Wow.
It's up this way?
Up there.
Soundstage. I wonder where they filmed this. Maybe Vancouver?
So I'll take you. Do you want to go in?
Yeah,
let's go in.
Of course I do.
Watch your step. It's completely lethal.
Copy that.
That would be really cool to go inside something like that.
So
a film set.
It's all a bit pulled apart. But
sorry. An autonomic gasping.
Right. Yeah. So
was there like when you first walked up?
What is that glass thing? Is that what the black thing was inside the scale models? I guess I'll have to watch the movie, and it probably won't make sense to me then. But right off the bat, that is a very detailed set. That looks really cool.
On this, you must have been like, "Oh man."
Yeah. No. It was great. So yeah, it was beautiful to see. So basically, what did we do? What can I tell you about this? Well, here's the main body of it. It's sort of slightly deconstructed right now.
Is it between, right, they're moving some parts out?
Moving parts, there's end walls which go in. We have a bunch of pressure windows which go in here. So basically what it is, these are all for the zero-G works. So
Right,
we've got
right.
all the handles when Grace is floating in here.
Wow.
That's one world of
Which
this.
means you have to
Where do you even get all that stuff? Is that stuff you have to make all those little like switches and buttons and those tens of thousands of lights, or are there like prop department things where are there like depots where you can just go and buy motherboards full of lights, or that's crazy amount of detail. I love that they did all that versus just being like, yeah, we'll animate it in post, or yeah, we'll CGI it all in post, like, because that way you have the very subtle things that people don't notice in low budget films that go unnoticed, like your hand hitting a button and the light of the button reflecting onto your hand just a little bit. You notice it when it's not there. And it's so much work to remember all the times when that happens and try to go in and do it all on the computer. But people insist on doing that in movies all the time. And I don't know why. Sure, this is a lot of work, but it's like, I feel like it's almost more work on the upfront and less work on the back end. Whereas like trying to CGI everything, it's less work on the upfront, but it's a lot more work on the back end. And if you miss stuff, which happens all the time, then you get a featured episode on places like Corridor Crew where they talk about all the misses. But I just think it's better to do practical. I know I'm biased because I'm a fan of that, but that is a really cool layout. I can't imagine, I can't imagine how many hours it took them to like build all that physically.
to fly out all sorts of different panels depending on where he's floating.
Yeah, so the whole set is built on an external exoskeleton framework system, which all pops apart. So there's a series of panels, one behind there, one behind there, one behind there, and one behind here.
Yeah.
Sorry. So that was that system. So you're now looking at the centrifugal version of the set, because when it was in this thing called acceleration gravity, you see these panels here.
Mm-hmm.
When you see it in the film, you see that little rung down there, that little blue step right at the bottom. This is a ladder system, and you climbed up into here.
Okay.
So this, you would have fallen to your death, and at the bottom there, that hatch would have been below you.
Gotcha.
So when you first come into here, and he first climbs into here, you're sort of surrounded by this sort of, this tunnel of light.
So in order to achieve that, either one, they put them on wires and they send them vertically or horizontally to make it look like he's floating vertically, or they take the whole set and they do this. I don't know which one. Maybe it's both, but either way, it's cool that they built it in a way where they would have to do some trickery in order to have it in the correct orientation. But I'm sure there was a lot of consideration for the practicality of filming it as well.
It's above him.
And the screens
And then
here?
the screens would be there, correct? Because they're designed to move on this slew system. Do you see these things
I do.
here? And then the chairs themselves also run on the slew system. And then the chairs...
Yeah, I mean, it looks like that whole thing is designed to move. It could even be that the whole thing rotates. I can't really see that well. I don't see any motors necessarily, unless they're down at the bottom there. But it looks like the whole thing is designed to move, whether it's just the inside there or the whole cage system. They've got it all rigged up pretty tight there. But that is really cool. You can see on the left side of the tube there, the 3 wires hanging down. So I'm curious, are those just electrical connections and they just need to be there? Or is that to like lift up that whole cage and kind of move it around as needed?
Themselves can, because he has to work in these different gravities and he has to operate within the entirety of the space, basically what they can do is they can basically run backwards and forwards. It's all motorized. You're good.
Yep.
You can run backwards and forwards on it. They can basically rotate and they can pitch and they can yaw.
I'm loving the Martin Baker ejection seat vibes I'm getting from the chair.
Well, that's exactly what we took it from. We just sort of messed around with it. And we did the same with the avionics. What the guys wanted to do is we didn't want to simplify it. In fact, what we wanted to do is sort of, particularly when you look at sort of, a lot of sort of fighter jet systems and all of that sort of airline glass, it says... We were heavily influenced by the sort of 747-400s and by the lighting systems from that particular aircraft.
It looks, I can see where they took that from for sure. It looks like this movie might be set in the past, maybe not the too distant past, but it's definitely giving me like early 2000s vibes.
Yeah, and exactly what you're doing here about just
Wanting
having
to
a
touch all
space
the
in
buttons.
which we can do like a little school kid and just having the best fun. So we want to and
Like even that laptop right there, that is an early 2000s laptop if I've ever seen one.
some of this stuff is all and in fact in the movie he actually uses these very buttons to eject the tanks.
I specifically remember the actors from Alien talking about how much fun it was to step on that set because every button lit something up.
Yes,
And
same.
it's great for the actor to have practical things to touch and.
Well, Ryan really wanted to all of the spaces with it.
It's starring Ryan Gosling, if you don't know.
With him because he's essentially by himself in space.
Yeah.
The sets need to be able to perform with him. Yeah.
Yeah, give him something
And
to
so
bounce off of.
give him things to do. So that's always been one of our sort of mantras on the film.
I'm also really, I happen to be weirdly familiar with airline windows because I know they're one of the most expensive parts
Yes.
of an actual airline.
Yes.
And you built these custom.
Yes.
But they look exactly like that heavily armored, multi-layered.
Well,
that's
we
expensive.
actually did, and on the other sets, is we've done that. We sort of we built sort of all the gasketing in between. They're proper sort of pressure windows.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what we were trying to do. Because I think when you build sets like this, it's important that when you see those sorts of details, you feel that they're actually doing something.
They're
so I think
holding space out.
It's a really important moment. That so yeah, we did spend actually a lot of time on that, and our hatches too. Shame there's actually.
I saw a functioning hatch
There's a
yesterday.
beautiful hatch up there.
Yeah.
From the ISS. So.
Oh,
all
you
of those
borrowed
things.
the hatch directly from the ISS? Or
Some of
give
them.
or
So,
take?
well, we played around with it. Essentially, they had square hatches. I think we've got like 5 different hatch types on the ship.
Looks like a brake rotor for a bicycle. That's pretty cool looking. I wonder if most of this is actually made out of metal or if it's like made out of wood, because I can hear as they're like stepping around and shifting their weight a little bit. It kind of sounds like wood creaking. I guess it could be plastic as well. That's very very possible. It could just be plastic, but I wonder what the main material is. I know they're going for the metal look, and actually this looks mostly metal. This particular hatch door piece, but I'm curious whether or not it's mostly metal or it's mostly plastic or it's mostly wood or what have you.
I think it's 5 of them. Yeah. Actually, when this was all in and when it was all lit, it was very beautiful because we're trying to make the experience of being in the Hail Mary, rather like it in life, have many different experiences.
Right.
Meaning, when you first wake up in the medical bay, we built a lot of that out of fabric. So it's very padded. It's a very soft embryonic world,
Right.
and it's very light in
very-
colour.
right.
It's these light, soft colours. By the time you get to the airlock, that is pure industry. That's lethal. You don't want to be in
No
there.
longer
You press the
taking care
wrong
of you.
button,
It's cool.
you're gone. This we wanted to give it. This is sort of a more sort of spiritual space in the sense that it has a dawn and it has a sunset in its lighting conditions. So when you're in.
It's really cool to hear from someone in the filmmaking industry who's put this much thought and emotion behind the different like moods of different spaces. Because that again shows me that they really cared about the movie they were making versus just like this has to be done, so we're gonna have to do it. Like it just shows the amount of detail they paid to the different things and the amount of passion they have for this project. And it's just making me want to see the film more and more every second I'm watching this.
In here, it growls at you, it comforts you, it cools you, it heats you up, it terrorizes you, it does all of those things.
It's a full character of the
So
film.
so the Hail Mary in itself has to sort of, we're trying to make it function like that. It needs to be a character,
It sounds like, is this film unique for you in the incredibly high level of coordination between all departments that
Yes.
it takes?
Yeah,
Because it seems
definitely.
to me like a crazy logistical nightmare, and I'm amazed that it's working.
Definitely. I think you learn that as you go as well.
Yeah,
Certainly
yeah.
stepping into this film, I didn't know any of, half of this. And I think it's a constant learning experience. Every day, something, appears on your doorstep, good or bad or good, that you have to solve with a very amenable team of people. And I think that's what's, got us to where we are, quite frankly.
So from my question I just asked a few minutes ago, it looks like most of this is wood. Obviously the framing is all wood. I'm just curious about the interior, whether that the main components that are made to look metal are actually metal or if they're wood or plastic made to look metal.
Because everyone's been brilliant. They have been brilliant. Truly, they have been. Yeah.
Well, as a production designer, you make different environments for different films.
Yeah.
And I know as a maker, there might be something I'll think about making that I'm not super in love with, but in the course of making it, I fall in love with it.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's some aspect of space hardware you didn't think that you would fall in love with, but that has really captured you on this film.
Really, for fabrics.
Really?
That is me and this YouTube channel. I started this YouTube channel because I went to Kennedy Space Center a few months ago, and I've always been a casual space fan, but casual meaning like I don't research anything. I just see headlines every once in a while, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. I'm a fan of that. So I went to the Kennedy Space Center a couple months ago and was like, wow, this is awesome. We are doing so much more in space than I thought we were. I have to get involved somehow. And then the night I was there, I stayed and watched a Falcon 9 launch. And that was it for me. I was like, okay, now I need to do something to outlet this creativeness inside of me that wants to be part of outer space in some facet. And so in the process of making this YouTube channel and reacting to videos every single day, I've not only learned to love outer space, but I've developed a passion for it out of just discovery and wanting to know more. I now have this huge passion for I feel it like I'm talking to random people on the side of the road about space because I'm so enthralled with everything we're doing. It's really cool. This channel for me is turning into a passion project, even though it didn't start as one. And if you're still here, I thank you for being along for the ride.
Really?
Yeah, I've really loved. We decided to listen. There's been so many beautiful science fiction films that have been made over the years.
Yeah.
And we purposely don't want to reference any of them because they're all great in their own right. But what we tried to do is we wanted to find a look ourselves, as we all do on all films. We wanted to make the film unapologetic. We wanted to say, it is this. And one of the ways I looked at it from the beginning was trying to see if you could use really good combinations of soft and hard surfaces, rather than everything being hard or soft. Let's sort of combine the two things. So working with fabrics and looking how, particularly insulation fabrics, and how fabrics are used in space has been really fantastic. And I've had this extraordinary drapes team on this film. And essentially,
a drapes team. That's crazy. Didn't even know that existed either. I still have to look into spacesuits. It's on my ever-growing list of things to look up about space, but I'm very interested to know kind of what the space age fabrics are.
Essentially, many of the sets have been entirely clad with different forms of, fabric design, but within the stitching, within the grommeting, within the foils that are behind it, and the shape language you can create from it, it can become very beautiful as well. So I think what I've learned from this is how what we've striven to do is also try and make it quite beautiful where necessary. The hatches too, I think, have been fantastic.
Every hatch I've seen has been I've wanted to open.
Look at a hatch and, how does a hatch work? What does it need to be? That's all been...
This is related, I swear. I recently got the amazing opportunity to board an aircraft carrier, and half of the doors, I'm like, I want this to be my front door. I just want to rip out my square frame, wooden front door, and I want to have this really intricate, metal looking, 15 lock, circular handle look, every single hatch I walked through on that ship, I was like, I want this to be my front door. I want this to be my bedroom door. I want this to be, they're all so cool looking, and they're all big and heavy and made out of ridiculous amounts of steel. And they all have these really intricate locking mechanisms that just look really robust. And, it's a crazy thing. I understand the passion for hatch doors.
Pretty fascinating.
Well, and most of the time in a big movie, all of these screens would be green.
Yeah.
There's so much energy. I feel like there's so much more energy in a space when it's practical.
Yeah, always. I agree. We've always, as our art department, we've always tried to produce the screen graphics that we can produce.
Yeah,
I also think, quite frankly, you end up getting a better result. I'll show you how.
Yeah.
It's like even say in what you're looking at here, we've designed the graphics. So you see that screen, there's more contrast in it. The blacks are blacker. This screen here, the black isn't as black, and that's purposeful. Because when you look at screen graphics, one thing that often I think we get wrong is we build too much symmetry. In fact, you build way too much symmetry into things. So what happens here is we can alter all of those things, which gives you the nuances to make something feel realistic.
Wow,
because if you
there's real
looked at
variegation.
if you looked at, that's a key word, because if you looked at a 747 cockpit, what you'd actually notice is everything isn't the same.
Right, they're all different vendors.
Chroma, color, sheen, and all the rest of it. So, for instance, we have full capacity when we're doing this to change the chroma, change the saturations, although these are all set at one level now, the buttons, when we actually film, we take a lot of light off a lot of them, so you break symmetry. And that brings you, that's
really cool.
the art of illusion.
Yeah,
I think if you can break symmetry often.
Charlie, it's so beautiful. Dude, thank you so much for giving me a walk through this world.
That's all right.
I can't wait to see it on screen.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I enjoyed that. Hopefully someone is still watching this. If you are, drop a comment. Let me know you still are. I really appreciate you making it all the way through my video. Again, this is kind of going to be a test. If this video gets some views, then I will be sure to do more sci-fi related content on this channel. If this video gets no views, then, I may wait maybe a few months and try again. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Anyways, this video will be linked down in the description, and I would appreciate a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy, and have a good day on Earth.